Everyone, so as mentioned, we're going to start at 5 minutes past the hour. If you guys want, please introduce yourself in the chat, and yeah, and then maybe our teams as well, Jack and Dune, if you guys can also just write a few words in the chat so that people know who you are.
Hi, I can start. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah. I was actually going to say in the normal chat, but yeah, I think voice is fine too. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah,
No,
I'll do
okay.
it here.
Yeah.
My name is Martin. I'm interested in Hummingbot. We are considering it using in a small project, arbitrage, and I'm in the call as well about learning about how to integrate new exchanges and what's the future roadmap of the project. Okay. Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, Martin.
Hey, my name is Peter, under nickname Azim on Discord. So I'm in the middle of implementing a connector for an exchange. I still have some problems with running the tests. I think I'm done, but I would like to know about the new release and what changes I will need to make for the connector to work. But yeah, I'm working with Hummingbot for like 1 month now. So I didn't do a lot of Python before. I'm a Golang guy. But yeah, for the purposes of this project, I had to jump ship again.
Yeah, I know. I think unfortunately there's a lot of languages used in the cryptocurrency world. Yeah, we kind of chose to focus on Python because eventually we do think that data science and like machine learning are going to be big parts of like what people can do with Hummingbot. And we ourselves come from like a quant fund machine learning background, and so that's kind of why we kind of decided to pick Python and kind of like make it better for data science and machine learning purposes.
I mean, I agree on that. I mean, can I comment that?
Yeah.
So I agree on that. In my previous job post, I was a data scientist in a high frequency, actually at a buying company, and we did most of the data science in Python. But then in production, we went to Golang just because of the latency. So I agree that most of the libraries are already done for in Python. But then when you want things to move fast, I would move
yeah, I totally agree. So actually, this is kind of why we have our strategies. This is actually originally why our entire code base was in Python, in order to so that when you kind of like trade in production, it's faster. I think I would say but overall, I think we are open to kind of like looking at kind of like other languages if people do kind of like give us feedback that speed is starting to become a real problem. I think so far we've seen that if you have it in Python, and because most kind of exchanges in the cloud, it doesn't matter as much. But actually, we can get into that in Q&A. This is a great kind of Q&A question, so let's save it for that. I think we actually have enough people, so let's get started. So I'll just say a few words about where we're going as a project to kind of set the stage. I'll hand off to Dune, our technical product manager on the Hummingbot open source side, who's going to kind of give a more of an in-depth intro. So we started Hummingbot about almost a year and a half ago. At the time, we had just finished, kind of wrapped up. We closed down our hedge fund. We didn't know what Hummingbot was going to be, and so but we knew that kind of people needed help on trading on all the different exchanges, both centralized and decentralized crypto. So when we first built Hummingbot, it was kind of like we basically focused on this one strategy called cross-exchange market making. And we had two exchanges, Radar Relay on the decentralized side and Binance on the centralized side. And so it was just one strategy, two exchanges, and then we just expected everyone to kind of run with that. So I think we didn't really anticipate all the kind of like the support from the community, but now about 18 months later, now we support about 10 different exchanges officially. We have 3 different kind of strategies. People are starting to build their own custom strategies. People have been building their own connectors for a while. And so I think we're all seeing that there's like a lot of interest from external developers to kind of build a project. And frankly, it's also because we ourselves kind of like, we can't build everything for everyone. So that's why I think this is like almost a necessary evolution in order to fully support all the different use cases and all the different exchanges out there. So that's kind of why we've been spending a lot of time in the last two, three releases on refactoring the code base, especially with respect to connectors, because that's kind of like where I think lots of people want to build. And so we're trying to make it easier for people to build new exchange connectors. In addition, we're starting to integrate into protocols. And that's really interesting because a lot of the new kind of like exchange designs are kind of these automatic market makers, and they live on kind of like decentralized exchange protocols. And a lot of new protocols are using these like new AMM models in order to bootstrap liquidity on their new decentralized exchange. But because of how these are designed, they basically rely upon arbitrage bots in order for them to kind of function and be stable. So we did a partnership with Settle Protocol to build out this like settle arbitrage strategy for them. And we're currently talking to other protocols about something very similar. And we believe that in the same way that Hummingbot connects to different exchanges, I think we can also do the same thing for the protocols. And so that's what you'll see some of that kind of like reflected in new designs today. And also, I think after we kind of finish this connector kind of refactoring process, I think we're going to do the same thing to strategies and try to make strategies easier to write and easier to build for anyone out there. So we're kind of transitioning from being just like a code base where like we wrote all the code and people are just using it, to a code base that is kind of aimed at external developers, has a kind of community of developers behind it who are adding to it, contributing to it. And we're kind of like making that transition to a fully kind of like community-owned and operated open source project. Because our goal for Hummingbot is for it to be kind of like essentially the kind of like we always use the analogy of TensorFlow inside the company. It's an end-to-end TensorFlow. For you guys who don't know, is an end-to-end framework for machine learning, and it really kind of just helps you build any type of machine learning model. It doesn't do the work for you, but it makes it a lot easier. And so that's kind of how we've always thought about Hummingbot. And now that I think we're about a year and a half into it, we've been able to assemble a great community of people all over the world who are both working on the project and contributing to it. I think that goal is actually now in play. And so that's why I think, for us, it's really inspiring to see all the developers who are out there who want to build on Hummingbot. And I consider it's kind of like our mission to basically serve all of you and to make the code base able to be built on by you guys. So yeah, that's it. So let me hand over to Dune, who's going to kind of go over a bit more of a bit more detail in the agenda. Dune, it's all yours.
Okay. Let me share. Okay. All right. So Sweden Go. I'm the technical product manager who recently joined the Hummingbot team. So we don't have a lot of slides here today because mainly it's developer centric. I'm just going to highlight some upcoming changes and the more important changes for this coming release 0.31. So where our lead developer Jack is going to details a bit more of the design changes, how it's going to affect you, and how it's going to make things easier for any developer who wants to create a connector. Then after that, we're going to open the floor for a bit of a open discussion. It could be anything that is related to the Hummingbot or strategy. So can folks see my share screen? Okay. So I'm just going to quickly highlight some of the upcoming changes, other than a few bugs in the v0.30. So these are the few highlights. Feel free to go to our GitHub repo. We have a project section where you can see the upcoming changes. So there are a few features that we are adding. One of them is to maintain the user account balance in the market connectors. Other than that, we also implemented the upcoming Bittrex connector API changes. The previous version of the Bittrax API is gonna be discontinued as of September 30th. So with this version change, we bump up to the user WebSocket. This will definitely help us solve the problem of the upcoming discontinuation of the V1 API. Other than that, we have the show last calculated profitability for arbitrage strategy in the status command. For some of the details, feel free to go to our GitHub repo to look at the conversation there. And other than that, we have also the refactoring, two refactorings. One is to standardize the names of all constants across all the connectors. So it'll be a lot easier for the developer to look at the changes, and also for anybody who want to look at and refer to other connectors. And you can see the correlation with the standardized name. It'll be a lot easier for you to see the correlation. So other than all these changes, we want to make the Hummingbot easier to use as well. So some of the folks has commented that, you know, the tutorial is something that would need some more information. So we have this initiative to redesign the tutorial section so that it will cover a lot more information in a more structured way to help you get a better sense of what, if you are a new developer coming from a different project, trying to learn the Hummingbots, you can get a simpler introduction what it does. And also we have a developer section that we will redesign to help you dive into more details. And last but not least, in this release, we have a new exchange connector, which is the crypto.com, which actually uses a pretty big change in this upcoming version. Okay. So the most important change here in this v0.31 is the connector redesign. I wouldn't get into too much detail, but just to highlight some of the points here. We want to simplify the new connector development so that we can use Python. The Python gives us a lot of flexibilities, but at the same time, it also makes it a little bit difficult for developers to create the connector. So by having the Python version is a lot more friendlier, and it can get developer up to speed faster. Other than that, we want to support other kind of markets other than just the exchange. Recently, we have the Celo, which is Ethereum based, and we are also supporting the protocol as well in the upcoming release. Other than the exchange, the Celo like AMM market, so we want to also support the derivative exchanges. So with this big connector redesign, that will definitely help us to speed things up and make it a lot easier to support. So with this basic introduction, I'm gonna hand this off to our lead developer to give you the details of the changes for the connector. Okay, Jack, you can share that.
Hi everyone, this is Jack here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen quickly. So, can you all see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to go to the big change on the market connector redesign. As Mike and Dun mentioned, the main reason is because we want to make the development of the new connector easier, to make it in Python only, or mostly Python. I'll get into the detail on that a bit later. Because we all know that originally the market connector need to be done in Python, and because we want to be able to get the performance and for the back testing purposes. But then we found out that it's quite difficult to develop in Python because it's difficult to debug, and every time you make changes to it, you need to recompile it, wait for it, and then to run it. So in Python, it's easier and more developer friendly. And at the same time, we also want to expand the connector to support a different type of markets, like we have Celo, we have other protocols and that based on Ethereum and other protocol as well. And in the future, we want to be able to support derivative kind of exchanges. So they're a little bit different. So I'll show you from the design. So the current design or the old design that we have is we have the market base, which is derived from the network iterator. So they're in Cython only. And when you want to make a new connector, you have to extend it from that market base. So with the new design, we sort of re-architecture the stack a bit and do a little bit of some tricks to make the base classes inheritable by both Cython and Python. So with the new design, we started off with a base connector base. This is the generally kind of what we generally connector that has the functionality and the members that we expect in the common connectors. Then from there, we have the exchange base, and then we have a derivative base. So as you can see that the connector base and the exchange base, they are still in Cython. But now they can be inherited from both Cython and Python. So the way we do that is we provide a dual support. So it just that we need to expose the Python version of the function. As you can see here, like the function that start with cdef, they are the Cython function, and the one with the def, they are the Python. So now the implementation is in the Python. So the classes that going to implement this connector base will need to implement based on whatever they are. Like for example, for the Cython, they can override both cdef and def functions. So basically, if you already done work on the connector in Cython, it still be working on this new design. There will be some sort of changes, but quite minimum. Like instead of you extended from the market base, now it's going to be the exchange base. So you can go to this document later for some of the details of what we do here, or just go to the code directly. At the moment, it's in development. So the connector base, we have the basic functionality that we are expecting in the connector. And for the exchange base, we're going to have all of that plus order book functionalities. That's the main difference that we're going to have in the exchange. For the derivative base, is currently still in the design because we are not quite certain yet of what we are expecting from this new base class. So it's still currently in design. And apart from that, we make changes in other part of the Hummingbot so that it can support this new design and it knows what to look for, because it used to be the market base. Now it could be either connector base, exchange base, or the new base classes. So that is it from the connector redesign. And do you want me to go to some of the field notes on the list node that we put it in for the connector chain summary?
Yeah, feel free to go kind of briefly go through some of them.
Okay. Most of the changes, you should be able to adapt it quite easily in if you're already working on the connector. So we make the developer updates and the connector chain summary in the release node that we're going to do the release in about 2 or 3 days time. So you will see that in there. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, we, instead of using market base, now you need to use exchange base. We remove some the data sort type that we don't actually use them for anything at the moment. They were intended for, yeah, anyway, we don't use them anymore. So you don't need, you just can just remove that from the connector. And we added a field functionality to the exchange base. For example, that to keep track of the balance update, there's some exchanges that they don't provide user account balance update via WebSocket. So that means the balance are not updated in real time. So you can make use of this new functionality by just setting the flag and implementing, like taking a snapshot. You see that in the code base when you go to the one of the examples.
Check which exchanges are like that. Like which exchanges don't have the website API, so we're getting the account.
I need to
Bitstamp, because I'm working on that connector, so Bitstamp doesn't have it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a few of our current connectors are also like that. So I would say, yeah, you should be able to kind of look at our code base and kind of like identify the ones that have that design and just copy it.
Yeah.
I think Liquid, right? Does
Yeah.
Liquid do this?
Yeah. Liquid also doesn't have that functionality.
Okay.
So it's not like real time because it's still, the bot doesn't know what else is happening on the exchange, like whether if the user is putting in the orders themselves, or they are withdrawing or depositing the coins. But it will get better than more real time, and this is probably good enough for the bot to keep on functioning. And apart from that, another big one is we formalize the trading pair format. So it used to be that we use like 2 different kind of formats. One is our internal Hummingbot format that start with the base and the code format. For example, it could be BTC-USDT. But exchanges, they do have their own format. Like for the Binance, they will be base and the code without the dash. Some other exchanges, they use in lowercase, some in uppercase, and some have the code first before the base in that format. So now we formalize them all, and so where you see the trading pair, that should be in the formalized format. So within the connector module, you do the conversion there, but outside the connector module, that should be in the formalized format. And also another small one, we remove the market argument from the in-file order base. We never use it for anything really. Yep, that's it from the changes.
Yeah, just to add on what Jack said. So we've made all the modifications to the current connectors. So if you guys are working on a connector, you should be able to look at like all the, basically any connector on the development branch right now. is actually using all the things that Jack just mentioned. So I think those examples should help you guys kind of build that a bit better. And I think also, I think the big change coming from our side is really kind of like the notion of just a generic kind of connector base class that a protocol can use to connect to it. So that allows kind of Hummingbot to more easily connect to all the different protocols out there. And then so it's kind of like if you have a decentralized exchange, an order book type exchange on that protocol, then you connect to exchange base. Exchange base is kind of designed for any type of order book exchange. And then furthermore, if you're building like a derivative, if you're building a connect to a derivative exchange, you connect to derivative base, which inherits from both order book, from both exchange base and connector base. So that's kind of like the idea behind the chain of like inheritance here. Now we don't have many examples for either kind of protocol connectors or derivative exchange connectors, but I expect we will be building those out over the next kind of few months. So the first ones are, we have Celo on the protocol side, and then we're currently working on a connector for Binance futures on the derivative side right now. So those examples, I think the Celo one, I think it should already be there, but we're going to refine that one and add some other protocols in the next few months. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jack.
If you want to see the Python market-based, my Python only connector, you can look at the crypto.com exchange connector, and that will give you the example of how to implement it in Python only. And it's mostly in Python, except that there's one that we still use Python for the order books, bid and ask updates, because Python is much faster for that purpose. So we don't want to sacrifice the performance on that area.
Okay. Should we move to Q&A, or is there anything else?
Yeah, I think we can open the floor for Q&A. So anybody have any questions that would like to ask?
Yeah, I have three questions. I don't know if I can go one by one. First, you sort of went into it. You mentioned, gave an example of using, I believe, like funding rates for like perpetual contracts, which seems really useful for a few strategies I can think of. Have you considered like maybe some sort of, I haven't gotten to implementing strategies working on a connector right now, but like a functionality that would allow a strategy to look into arbitrary messages. So not like order books, but say exactly like the funding rate and decide based on that. So not like just some general functionality that would accept any message from a connector. Yep. And have that be accessible to strategies.
Yeah, so you're breaking up, at least for me. So I couldn't really hear a lot of your question, but I think you're asking how you can build how you can build a strategy that takes into account funding rates on a derivative, on a perpetual exchange. Was that your question?
Yeah, like that's one specific example, but I was thinking maybe if there was like a more general functionality, say like we didn't consider funding rates because there weren't perpetual contracts back then or whatever, but now there's this new type of messages that would be useful for a strategy, and how could they access it if it's not part of an order book, you know?
Right. Okay, I see. Yeah, so yeah, in general, I think we want to capture like all the different information that's relevant to a strategy. So that's why we for normal spot exchanges, we get the user account updates like alongside the order book, so that they can kind of like inform like how you're kind of like setting your orders and like the size of your orders and those kind of things. So I think for derivative exchanges, yeah, we definitely are going to pull in the funding rate as just like a starter. But I think there might be other points of information that we'll also need to pull from a derivative exchange in order to make better decisions. In general, so this process, this part of Hummingbot is probably not that exposed yet, but like generally speaking, you should be able to kind of like use Hummingbot to like pull more information from the exchange as you need it. So we kind of only have that right now for balanced updates. I think as we're building out the Binance Perpetual Exchange, we'll pull in the funding rate, but there might be other points of information you might need as well. And you should be able to use Hummingbot to also pull that as well. Did that answer your question?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Like a further question, if I'm not just hogging the microphone, but have is it have you considered already using Hummingbot to like just record market data? So like say we wanted to set it up, yeah, to just like
yes.
Like I was thinking like maybe writing a strategy that logs everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we've had that request a lot from people. So I think we kind of started doing this recently we created an initiative scripts, kind of these things small Python functions you can use to modify an existing strategy. Because one thing that people want to do was to use kind of like the market prices to kind of like detect when the market's more volatile and then widen the spreads when that market is more volatile. So I think we built functionality to keep track of the order book prices for a while. And so you can kind of like make some calculations based on like the recent prices. Overall, I do think that we should kind of like expose that functionality in a more general way so that people can kind of like, use Hummingbot to basically, record the data that's coming from a certain exchange. I would say we don't have any like plans for that right now, but I think if you guys wanted to like, if you guys can help us kind of design that better, maybe if you could like create a GitHub issue and then, kind of like point us to it. I think if we had like an idea for what people wanted to do with data, what kind of data you wanted to capture, it might help us kind of designing that kind of functionality. But I would say capturing data is definitely something that we want to allow people to do with Hummingbot. I think that any kind of like, something more concrete needs in terms of data might help us design.
Yeah, Peter Sikuda has a question. Could Hummingbot also support market data download? So additionally to reading the live data, the bot would also save the record that would be useful for some additional analysis for backtesting.
Yes. Thanks. I think that's the same question that I just covered, which is
okay.
People want to collect data for Hummingbot, and so I think for both Peter and also for Mario, if you could like basically either like create a GitHub issue or append onto another one that someone else has created, that really help us define what people want in terms of data, and will help us design that functionality.
Definitely, thank you. We'll do that and hopefully contribute with that aspect. One last question on my part. And I guess this goes back to like maybe when you originally designed Humming, but did you ever consider that maybe, do you think having the strategies react like tick by tick to each order book change would be useful? Is that sort of like overkill, do you think? Or is that in the plans going forward? I don't know if you ever thought along those lines.
So you mean like tick by tick? So I think that's right now. That's what we're doing. So the way the Hummingbot strategies work is that there's this tick function which defines a certain like clock size. Right now it's 1 second, and then every tick, the bot basically executes a loop where it's like, kind of like it's the same loop every time. And in that loop, it listens for what's coming from the exchange. It, kind of like looks at like what the user's account balance is and other kind of pertinent information. And finally, it makes a decision as to like what orders to create and what orders to cancel and so forth. So it's like, that is a structure of the Hummingbot kind of strategy. Now, in terms of tick size, right now it's 1 second. We have had people who kind of like adjust that lower to make the ticks faster, which is doable, I believe. I think there might be a kind of lower bound on that because you are kind of making API calls to kind of like exchanges, and that also takes some time. So I think people have tried tick sizes of like half a second, and it still should work. But I think lower than half a second, I think people may have run into some problems. So, but overall, the goal for Hummingbot is to kind of like essentially be as fast as is necessary to trade on a cryptocurrency exchange. So, yeah, I would say like, I guess like, maybe is there another design that kind of like you've considered, or is that kind of, are you kind of asking if how Hummingbot is designed?
Yeah, no, yeah, I guess tick was a misnomer on my part. I was referring to, instead of having it this, be by clock tick, having it maybe decide every order book message update, hand it back to the strategist and say, well, do I want to do something with this order book change, or is that just overkill? I don't know.
It's a good question. I'm not sure actually. So I think I would say when we first designed, I think when we first designed this, we felt that that would be like almost like it's like yeah, it's almost like because like if you don't kind of set a certain kind of like defined kind of tick size, you know, if you're kind of just reacting to like what the exchange is saying, I think that because you're getting more than one order book message like per, they kind of come in bursts, so it's like hard to like react, you know, to one of them because the next one might kind of come in as well, you know, during your while you're actually making that kind of decision. But yeah, I mean, I think we are open to feedback, however. So, you know, if any other one has seen kind of like other bots that are faster or more performant, please let us know, because I mean, we want to make sure that Hummingbot is, even though it's open source, is kind of like best of breed among any kind of bot in crypto. So yeah, so I would say I guess yeah, I would say I haven't seen any kind of faster designs than what we have, but if anyone has, please let us know.
Okay, I want to jump in a little bit here. The way that the strategy and the connectors are designed, you should think of them as like a bunch of async operation or services that running parallelly, almost at the same time. And we make use a lot of async operation in for many of the tasks. For example, when we get waiting for the request, make a request to get something from the exchanges, we don't wait for, technically we don't wait for the response, but we go and do other tasks. So in that way, the connectors and the strategy, they are run by the clock. The clock start the connectors, for example, and the strategy, and the connector will start a bunch of services that's going to get all the relevant information. And the tick is simply just based on every tick, what the connector or the strategy is supposed to do during that tick. Yeah, that's the general design. So yeah.
Hey, this is Randy. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the way that other like high frequency market makers work is a lot of the updates are made off of external prices. So like in your bot, you're taking an external exchange price feed. So and then you'll see in some of the more professional third-party software like Stellar or Trading Technologies, there's a sensitivity setting, right? So that like if the price is just sort of noise and it's just moving back and forth, and you really don't care about moving your prices in or out, right, or up or down, and you'll accept that price. But then if something dramatic happens, and say that you're taking a Coinbase Pro feed to quote on Binance, for instance, if you see a huge jump in Coinbase, you do want to react faster than a second or whatever. And time, time in trading is irrelevant, right? But to your point, Michael, you have to create a tick in some way to measure it. But I think the best method, and it's hard, is to say, okay, I'm going to adjust every X time, and you're calling that a tick right now. 1 second, unless something dramatic happens and it's outside of these bands, and these bands are I defined, user defined, and I'm looking at an external price. But that's a harder problem to solve, but I'd say down the road we might want to think about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's kind of like, you're saying there's kind of like events that happen outside of a normal tick kind of process. Like, if this happens, then we need to, almost like you said like event listeners for certain things that.
Exactly, and like if you're looking internally at the market, you'll accept whatever price you're quoting around, because the only information you're using in that bot is the order book itself, right? Mm-hmm. that you're looking at. But if you're looking externally, you have the external impetus to move quickly and get the hell out of the way, something, or lift or hit, right? Take those orders if they look good. So,
okay.
That's
interesting. Yeah. I think, I would say, I think we could consider it down the road. I think right now, I feel like we're still making some really core kind of changes to the foundation of the bot. But I think, I do think that like our goal in the long term is to make Hummingbot like the definitive like open source framework for algo trading for individual and professional. So that's why I think in the future we do want to take into account kind of like what professional traders are doing and try to incorporate that into Hummingbot.
Awesome, thank you.
There's another question from Peter. With the current design, is it feasible to develop arbitrage strategies with more than 2 pairs, like one bot instance scanning 10 pairs and then executing on them? So that definitely is feasible. So overall, we're trying to like focus on connectors right now because we feel like that's what people want to develop the most. But after this, in probably about, I want to say about 2 months, we're probably going to start focusing on kind of strategies. And I think arbitrage is actually probably one of the strategies that we should be kind of improving in the next few months. And there's quite a lot of kind of like nuances to arbitrage. So yes, one of them is definitely kind of like just hitting more pairs. Right now the design is kind of basic, but it could actually look at like handle more pairs than just the 2 that you're looking at. Another aspect of arbitrage is triangular arbitrage. So looking at like 3 pairs and doing triangular arb between them. And then finally, we're starting to see there's actually quite a lot of nuances in terms of how you rebalance. So for example, with arbitrage, you always end up in a state where there's like kind of one market is like overbalanced on one leg, and then the other market is overbalanced on another leg. And sometimes you kind of want to like rebalance, even if the bot's like it's not quite an arbitrage, but it helps you, because if you don't rebalance, then you kind of get stuck, and then only one leg is possible. So I think there are kind of like situation arbitrage where you want the bot to kind of rebalance a little more intelligently and kind of trade, even if like the arbitrage profit's like not quite where your minimum threshold is, because it helps you maintain more flexibility down the road. So I think with arbitrage, there's actually quite a lot of complexity. It's almost like the same way that we've added a lot more functionality to the pure market making strategy over the past 6 months. I think we can do the same thing to arbitrage in the next few iterations. But I think the larger goal, I think, is to not so much like have these like kind of predefined strategies that everyone is just running, but rather than that, having kind of like more flexible strategies that people can kind of like fine tune and like adjust. So that's kind of why we added this notion of scripts recently, to kind of like, instead of like taking every single feature request and building them into strategies, instead kind of building them to scripts, so that people can kind of like still have the basic version is the strategy is still pretty simple, and then you can add on these extensions if you want to further customize it. So I think that's kind of the model that I think we're going to try to go with in the future, and which actually might mean simplifying some of the current strategies in order for them to be kind of more easily extended.
I have a question about Jack's presentation. So there was this slide which showed the new design, and it included like just like the Bitstamp connector. And now the question is, so are you working on a Bitstamp connector maybe? Because I'm working on one and would be.
We're not working on a Bitstamp connector actually.
Okay, cool. So I can finish it and so that we won't double the work.
That's right. That's right. We are talking to Bitstamp actually about a partnership. So I think if you did do one, we would actually want to, if you wanted to, make it part of the open source project. Because
okay, perfect.
Because
I'm also in talks with them because I mean I'm based in the same city as their offices. So so the second question is, so in your docs you mentioned that you have to provide communication channel if you contribute to code. So how is this usually done?
Yes, so we have a few different models for this. Because typically the Exchange connector is built like by the Exchange, and if it's like a smaller exchange, we would want them to kind of support that. So that's kind of why we have, our expectation is that if you're a small exchange and you want your connector to be supported by Hummingbot, you have to do this. Now we do other cases where it's like someone it's like a member of community is building connector, in which case it's probably unreasonable for us to expect you to like do all the work that Exchange would do. So in those cases, especially those cases, the Exchange is usually larger, and in that case, we would kind of take over the connector from you and maintain it going forward. So we're actually doing that for OKX at the moment, where someone from a community built OKX connector, and we're taking over from that person and maintaining it going forward.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, so I think this is a pretty good first call. If you guys have more questions, you can always ask them on the developer channels. So the members of the team are all pretty active on those new dev channels. And then we'll try to have another meeting like this in about 1 month with the next release, and just kind of go through a similar format. Okay, all right, thanks everyone. And this will be recorded as well, and I'll post this on Reddit and Discord. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye. This is pretty cool and excited about hopefully contributing.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.